Naomi.
Hello, hello. It's Danielle.
Yes, yes. And I'm DJ DN3. I'm excited today.
So excited.
You know what I'm saying?
I've been so excited all week.
Why are you guys excited? Because I'm excited, but should we tell the people why?
Oh,
and it's
man.
not because LeBron is headed back. I'll tell you that right now.
Man. We have no other than Dr. Neil Lester, PhD, up in the house in the Mid-New Marauders show today.
We do.
Dr. Lester, what's going on? Is your mic on?
Yes, it is. So, yes,
Great.
thanks for having me.
Oh, man. Infinite thank you for coming out. Infinite peace, infinite respect. Thank you so much. And today we got this is the first of a two-part topic. And this is one that we've been meaning to get to for a long time. We are going to go into the depths of the N-word. And, man, I mean, first of all, Miss Danielle, I mean, if you can just give
The N-word.
a quick rundown on Dr. Lester.
Dr. Lester.
Yes, please. I'm excited. I'm
All
too
right.
excited.
I see this. DJ DN3 is like jumping up and down over here in excitement because not only we're excited just to bring you this topic because it is a really important topic. It's very relevant to our culture, to our people, to overall humanity, and it's definitely one that we need to be examining. But as well as we do have Dr. Lester in the house, and we attended a lecture at South Mountain Community College to put on a couple months ago.
Yes.
And it was about the N-word. So talk to us a little bit about that, just a little bit, and then, and a little bit about you.
Well, I was glad to be invited, but it's interesting to me that the conversation seems to be accelerating because we are not talking about in ways that I think are critical and deep race relations in this country. And I think in the last 8 years, something has happened. I think many of us know what that something is, but it has forced us to re-examine how we think about language, but also that word in particular. So that particular presentation was during Black History Month in February, and I'm glad that the conversation continues beyond February.
Yes.
So thank you very much for having the audacity to talk about what many will not talk about or can't talk about because they're not equipped to talk about it.
Right. This is definitely, and I know like a person like myself, I mean, I'm very passionate on the topic, and definitely, I mean, I thank all the Mid-New Marauders, like my family here, to actually like make this possible for this, because like you said, a lot of platforms, like won't go into this, you know what I'm saying? And it's just like something that I've grown to, I guess, feel compelled that I have to say something about this. You know what I'm saying? So
well, not everybody is doing it. So hats off to all of you for deciding that you want to take it, but also to move it beyond the surface. This is not about who can say it and who can't.
Right.
It's about whether or not those who can say it and do say it should say it.
Ooh.
People.
Yes, it's going to get deep.
Y'all gotta hear this, man. I mean,
So we're excited. So the first, indefinitely, because the conversation is one that should be, not just in Black History Month. It's not just for today. It's for tomorrow, and it's for beyond. So yes, we did break into two-part series. So this one, we're going to break down some knowledge and some history, as well as the impacts of the N-word on the community and its effects, and then just hopefully have you walk away with some critical thinking and examination. And then you get to tune in next week with us as we wrap it up with Random, a.k.a. Mega Ran. He's going to be in the building. That brother does not use the N-word in any of his music
I can't find it.
at all.
Because it's not there.
Why is that?
Because it
I
ain't
I
there.
can't find it.
And really
And
looking
not-
at that consciousness,
Yeah.
that he chooses to embrace with that. So it's going to be a good 2 weeks. We're definitely going to build on a solid foundation today, though, with Dr. Neil Lester in the house. So glad you guys are tuned in. We're going to jump into some music, and then we're going to get back, and we're going to get started. I'm excited.
Yes. Let's get into this new Rod Diggett Marco Polo Chuck D on this thing.
Yes.
Storm coming, hot joint right there. I think it's it applies to the topic. So let's go in. It's the New Marauder Show. DJ DN3 RadioSupa.com.
We'll be back.
Please.
Be back.
Welcome back to the Mid-New Marauder Show, y'all.
All right, y'all. So
Hello.
here coming up on our, I guess, first segment. God, I can't speak today. On our first segment of the show, We're gonna go ahead and talk a little bit about, I guess, the history.
Yeah, we're just going to jump in.
Yes.
Examining the N word, the history,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Where did it come from?
Yeah.
The etymology, origins.
Yes.
Dr. Lesser,
Well,
we're just going to let you take this away.
Well, I am not a linguist, so let's establish that
All
at
right.
the outset.
Disclaimer.
I am a literary scholar, and I study
straight,
stuff.
people.
And I'm always distracted slightly when lots of people approach this saying, so what exactly is the history? Where did the word come from? And this is not disparaging your question here. It's just that it depends on which history we're looking at and
All right.
how far we're going back in history. And I have had people in the in audiences say, that there is this Egyptian history where the word spelled differently, Nagar, variations on that, actually meant wise serpent. I don't know that anybody who is a millennial now or anybody born in the last 30 years would necessarily know that, and I'm wondering if our use of that word somehow connects with that reality.
Yes.
So while I'm aware of that reality, I do know that the history of those of African descent doesn't start when we landed in Jamestown. What I do know, though, in terms of that relationship with Europeans and the Portuguese and the Spanish, is that we were named by people who were not us. We did not name ourselves in that sense. And that naming is where I actually start my research as an African American literary scholar who looks at how black folks have defined themselves and been treated here in the quote unquote New World. So a part of the research that I've looked at talks about the earliest times that this was documented, whether it was written or said, and that was in that encounter where the Portuguese and the Spanish in the 1500s described black bodies as negro. And when I talk to audiences, particularly high school and middle school audiences, I say, well, we know that negro means black, and what are the kinds of ways that we connotatively and denotatively associate black with all that is bad? And it didn't take long before that blackness, in the same way that Malcolm X uses that dictionary example, say, look up black, look at white, and what do you come up with? Is that it became uncivilized, it became uneducatable, it became undesirable, it became ugly, and all that became folded up when black folks arrived in Jamestown in the 1600s and became sort of the negative, disparaging thing that we still have residuals and baggage from today. So the history in and of itself, for me, is not about dates, but about manifestations of it. And when I talk about history, I start looking at minstrel songs of the 1800s, and I start looking at slave narratives, and I start looking at all those ways that the culture, the North American U.S. culture, defined and restricted black people through this naming.
Wow. So basically you're saying, like, I guess, like, starting from that history as opposed to, I guess, starting from the, like, etymology of the languages, like, way before, like, millennia before. And, like, as I was, I guess, talking about on break, like, I guess I was looking at it in two paths. Like, we look at it as, like, like the Egyptian origin of, I guess, the continents, and then the origins of how we were referred to, in slavery times, brought over here.
Mm-hmm.
And I made the analogy of, like, the Chitlin theory. Basically, like, this thing is, like, bigger than hip hop. It predates hip hop, this N word, and we took it as a term of endearment, the same way most of our ancestors took the chitlins as a delicacy. It was, I guess, all that we had to eat, so we had to dress it up or whatever. I don't know. I'm on course with this philosophy of thinking.
Well, you're not alone. You're not alone in that. And I remember the late Dr. Maya Angelou saying, I don't know if it was a conversation with Common or someone else, or maybe Dave Chappelle, and she said something about when the word became poison, you can go to a pharmacy, and if it has bones and a skull on it, it's poison. no matter what you pour it in, if it's a fancy vase that you've gotten from someplace, it still remains poison. And part of what I'm looking at in terms of the use of the word are the ways in which this current generation, and I would say this generation since hip-hop, has somehow convinced people that the way that you can make it a term of endearment is by doing all these sort of interestingly and deceptively new ways of spelling and pronouncing, and historically that's just not true. Historically, it's not true. The ways in which we say the ER is somehow different than the A or the GA is not true.
It's not.
It's not.
You broke it down.
Because it's not true. Look at the minstrel songs.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. So that's what I'm saying is once you see that, or here's another case, and this is again not based on being a linguist, but rather looking at if you change the endings of the word and you pronounce it differently, what you haven't changed is the root of the word. Right. The NIG is still there. And trust me, if somebody were to come up to you now and call you an NIG, or in the case of, you know, a novel written by Harriet Wilson in 1845, she named the title that, and it was disparaging. It was about a servant who was in a white household, and Harriet Wilson was attacking abolitionists who were devoted to the cause, but only in talk. And so in many ways, you know, at South Mountain, and I mentioned this as I opened my talk, the poster with my picture on it that was advertising the talk was saved as NIG poster. That was not flattering, nor was that a term of endearment. So even if you change and polish up and perfume the ending of it, and then you watch the choreography that's associated with, well, how did you say it? And what did you mean?
Right.
I would say you still haven't changed the NIG part, and that is still problematic.
And the thing about, and I'm glad you brought up like your lecture, because I mean, you dropped so many jewels on that too. I mean, like looking at these old children's songs
and books,
that you know what I mean. That right now we just think so much or so little of, and you're looking at the official lyrics.
That's right.
It wasn't any GERs.
Right.
It was GA.
It was GA.
And the thing about it too, you think like a southern, like the southern accent.
Yes.
No matter if you're black or you're white. If you're, if you're gonna say it, they're not saying it in that accent with the ER, like,
and that's a lot of work to have to listen to how, and then trying to get into somebody's head about what they mean, because you don't know what they mean.
Well, I think that you even have to take a moment to step back and be like, oh, no, I didn't mean it this way. This is how I meant it. That is some disconnect. There's some disassociation there. That means somewhere along the way, you know what you were saying or what you're receiving.
That's right.
Is wrong.
Like I don't want you to be offended by this, but
right.
Or don't take this the wrong way.
Right.
Then obviously something about what you're about to say can be offensive. Well, and in particular that spelling kind of nonsense. Those are songs, and I pointed out, and since then I've discovered the ice cream song, also.
Yes.
The one that many of us heard in our neighborhoods with the ice cream truck.
I think it was the Mr. Softy.
Whatever it's. Some people say it's "Do your ears hang low? Do you waddle to and fro?" But the point is that that's become so normalized. But the original lyrics had to do with the N-word eating watermelon. So once you know that, my refrain is you can't unknow that. So even if it's Old Susanna or Polly Wolly Doodle or even the little books that children were supposed to have to learn how to count, you can't undo that. And there was some reason to construct that, because it was not just the words, but it was also the story. It was not just the narrative, but it was also the images.
Wow.
That's the history that many don't know about.
Thank you for that. Right now, you hear this jazz song I've got playing in the background, and I'm just drop a little, I guess a little knowledge, because the Menu Marauder show is always a method to the madness. This is Red Clay by Freddie Hubbard, and this was sampled by a Tribe Called Quest on their album Midnight Marauders. And pretty much our show is basically, the name of our show is an ode to that album. And on this particular song, it was called Sucker Nigga. And Q-Tip was rapping on the song. And I don't know, like to this day, I don't know what his stance was on the word, because he, like, when he's rapping, he's like saying, he's dropping the history. He's saying, how negative the word is, but he's still using it. He's still going to use it, And
Every
that's-
other word is
right.
literally.
Common said that too, remember?
Right.
On the ESPN special. He said the same thing.
Yes, yeah. So it's just like with this hip hop culture, it's basically my whole thing is I'm not an advocate for censorship. That's the I guess the devil's advocate, if you will.
Yeah.
Because who are you to tell me that I can't use a brown paint
Right.
brush, when I'm painting my pictures or so, you know what I'm saying? So,
Well, but part of my conversation, though, is not about censoring other people, but about self-censoring and the ways in which people think consciously. I can say the word. You can say the word. This is not, criminal consequences if you say it. It's only criminal if you decide that you're going to, spray paint somebody's house or garage or car. But everybody sitting in this room and those listening can say the word. It is not like yelling fire in a crowded theater. You're not going to be arrested. But again, and it doesn't take away your, all these constitutional rights you have to say.
Right.
What it does, however, mean is that there may be consequences to that, both inside the community and well as outside. And that's what I said. This is about being able to think about it.
Right.
context.
Yeah, it's not about some emotional stuff. I'm not personally offended when I hear the word. What I look at, though, is the ways in which people have unthinkingly used the word because they don't know a history. Once you know the history, you can't unknow that. And then
Right.
you choose
Right. You
whether
make
or
the
not you
choice.
use it. It's a choice.
Yes, you make
That's
the
what
choice.
it's about.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Well, and that's kind of like what we see here on the show, like, because all of us, definitely, while we're in agreement with some things, we're not in agreement with some things, and
Absolutely.
we tell all of our listeners, like, we're not here to tell you what to think. Just think.
Just think.
Just think.
Well, because so
and
many
then just
people
make that
aren't
choice upon
thinking,
yourself.
though.
You
Right.
know, yes.
So many people aren't thinking. It's
thinking.
easier not to think. And in
Yes,
fact,
it's
Frederick Douglass says this in his narrative in 1845, Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass. He says once he learned to read and write, he started seeing what freedom was like because he read The Liberator. So in many ways, being enlightened does not make you happier. It makes you see things that you never saw before, and the things that you see are not always pleasant things.
Right. Exactly.
It does not mean, however, that ignorance is bliss.
Do you think that's why it tends to be a little bit easier these days, at least, to embrace the word because it's become just something easy? And I guess, yeah. What do you
Well,
think about that?
it's only easy contextually. It's only easy if it's not your lived reality. If it's your lived reality, the fact that someone else would name you something that is connected with so much negativity, and the fact that it's not personally about you, it's really about people who look like you. So it's like racial profiling. You know, when I go through TSA, they are not patting down my locks because my name is Neil Lester.
Right.
They are patting down my locks because I look like the other guy who has locks or the woman who has locks, and there may be some weapons in my locks.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying. Use of the word, I'm not personally offended by it. I'm concerned because it's not about you, but it's about any of us who are brown skinned could wear that badge. And, if no matter what status you achieve in this world, you can always be snatched out. So I've heard people say, oh, well, you don't have to be what other people define you. Well, tell that to a child who's been called that, or other ways that a child has been abused when you don't have the skills to sort of let it roll off your back like, water on a duck's back. So in many ways, this is not about whether we're personally offended, because people want to say, oh, I'm personally offended. Well, I'm not concerned about whether you're personally offended. I'm concerned about whether you're critically thinking about what language you're using, or is the language controlling you?
Yeah. Okay, let's breathe. It's like, what do you say after that? I think that's really important to bring up because I don't think people critically think about the potency of words.
Right. Oh.
Right?
Yeah.
The potency of words.
Right.
And how that really affects our day-to-day interactions as individuals and then as a conscious collective. Right? Because like you said, you're not personally bothered by it, right? At some point in life, though, perhaps you were, before you build your critical thinking skills, right? And then your child or their children one day.
Yes, that's right. And I think
Right?
that's when I became aware of it in a level that was not just intellectual. I have 2 brown children. And I remember sitting on our balcony in our neighborhood I was preparing for class, and I hear these young people, middle school people, walking down, and they're referring to this N-word in their class. And I don't know whether they were using it disparaging, but it made me uncomfortable. And what it made me realize is that my kids and your kids and others, brown people's kids, could wear that at any moment, and it can really become like a nuclear bomb. It's an insult. And even for those who allege that you can take it back, you know, I go back to Toni Morrison saying, how can you take back something that you never owned? And that way that it was used disparagingly was never something that we named ourselves.
Right.
That's the difference here. So I'm understanding. I wish there were a connect to that place where everybody could sort of African descent could imagine themselves in kings and queens, but I don't know that I don't know that we've necessarily been educated that way.
Right.
To sort of know that and believe that and then live that.
Man, I'm gonna I guess try to connect that with one of my thoughts on the word itself. To all you Walking Dead fans out there, I mean, I like to call the N-word the zombie of the English language. Like, I look at it as undead. It's very infectious, toxic, and I mean, the only way that you can get to it is you got to hit it in the brain. And it's been like, I mean, you know.
Well, that's
just like one good whack.
That's a good analogy, especially when we tried to bury it. What was that, 2008, when we had the funeral for it, and it's still walking around alive. So there may not be a disconnect between your zombie image after all.
I mean, you're right. I mean, which I thought was kind of pointless of that, but you know, I mean, I understand the whole motive, and you know, I mean, there's a. You know, I mean, I guess there's an appreciation side of me when it comes to that, you know. Hip-hop psychology in the N-word. We're getting into hip-hop right now. I was trying to make a point when I was at your lecture at South Mountain, like saying that this is hip-hop. We are the generation of innovators, especially of slang, styles. I mean, this is... you know, what we do. And I mean, us as black, brown peoples that, you know, created and innovated this art form. And we all know that the whole world, like, pretty much fell behind us. You know what I'm saying? We set the tone of everything. A lot of slang that we created, it goes on to the next. I mean, it has a shelf life.
Absolutely.
It has, you know what I mean? Like, back in the day, we were saying fresh. Right. You know what I'm saying?
I still say fresh.
I mean, yeah, right. But at the same time,
that's
just yours, right? Right. But not as a collective. I mean, I'm just saying, not as a collective.
Absolutely. Right. And I think everybody in here is saying amen and amen to that.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And then people that are our listeners out there, feel free to, like, please, like, you know, tell me where I'm going wrong with this, please. You know what I'm saying? It's just like every word that we create as a hip-hop culture has a shelf life to it. You know what I mean? Like, swag died out. You know, turn up is on his way out. You know what I'm saying?
It should have never went on his way in.
I'm saying, I mean,
but there's power in that kind. There's power in that kind of creation and innovation.
Exactly.
Because you're wondering, like, what's next?
Right. Exactly.
What's next?
Now, I was making to the point. Shout out to boss man TJ. You know, last night I saw him. I'm saying to myself, all right, we as a hip hop culture, I mean, you know, when we get older, we mature. We're going to look back at this, and we're going to say to ourselves like that, all right, we innovated all the slang, we innovated these styles, but do we really want to see the N-word, the longest lasting, like, so-called relevant slang word? Do we really want to see that?
Well, but I'd go back and connect, because that's a valid point. And even the examples that you use were not about people, though. The examples that you use, dope and fresh and all that, those were not people. Those were not identities that were put on people.
Okay.
What we're talking about is an identity that was put on people, and that identity has sustained itself through behavior and treatment.
It's that zombie.
That's the zombie
it's
thing.
Zombie.
So it's not fresh. It's not like Michael Jackson changed bad to good. It's not like we changed the spelling of fat, F-A-T, to mean, you know, P-H-A-T, or dope. Those are not people. Those are descriptors of things. This became an identity, and that identity hasn't changed because black people haven't been treated any differently. We still have, you know, get lynched. We still get killed if our music is too loud. So as Common said in that ESPN piece, that the N-word is about the Birmingham bombings.
Right.
It's about those 4 little girls who walked in that church, and only 5 little girls, 4 were killed, 1 walked out. That's what the N-word is. The N-word is not about whether you're innovative and you're spelling it differently. And what I tried to show is that you're really not being innovative if you think that spelling it that way has somehow made it new and different. Because it was spelled like that back in the day by people who didn't like black bodies.
Right.
So there's nothing innovative about that. In fact, using the word and using cuss words, the MF word, the B word, there's nothing innovative about that. It's just reusing the same thing. It's an inability to think. It's an inability to look at you controlling the language as opposed to the language controlling you.
Wow. Wow.
In the examples that you just cited there.
Wow.
In the examples that you cited there, you're not controlling that. That is something that's being perpetuated. So to somehow think that we can change that potentially is an illusion, because you're not changing anything because it was like that back in the day.
Right.
Right.
So how do you think, wow, in terms of perpetuating, right,
Yeah.
this word,
Yeah.
I think it does go back to understanding that the word is, it's associated with a group of people,
Yes.
right? And
Negatively.
Negatively. And you can't change a group of people. The group of people are always going to exist,
Right.
right?
Or the people who named.
Right.
Racism still exists.
Racism
and
still
the people
exists.
who name, and the white supremacy,
people told you
and the
differently.
capitalism, and the miseducation, it continues.
Right.
And I think there is something to be said for Du Bois's notion of double consciousness, where
Yes.
the potential is there for us to internalize that, and we don't care any more about ourselves than other people have cared about us.
Right.
Wow.
Ooh. Ooh. Man, there's just so many ways you could get. Miss Mimi, what do you think? Like, man, wow.
I've actually just been taking this all in because, I mean, I know that you've always really taken a lot, obviously, as, social activist and being really heavily in the community. And I've learned a lot from DN3 and just from sitting here in the conversation with Dr. Lester. So to be quite honest, I'm still just taking this all in because, I sit back. I'm one of those observers. I don't really ever say very much because I feel like I don't know enough about too many subjects. So therefore, I sit back and observe. No, I mean, I do, but not
You're a
necess-
smart one.
Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
right,
I,
right.
I bite my tongue until I know when to speak.
Right.
But I'm just still kind of in awe because I guess I just never thought about it in a lot of these different terms.
Well, here's a way also. I think about, yes, in fact, the innovation of hip-hop, I don't deny that. I look at it as a global phenomenon. In fact, I'll admit that I discovered Kanye West in Korea. Everybody else knew who Kanye was. And I went to Korea and was looking at a dance performance of one of my colleagues there, and lo and behold, they were doing the Kanye Jesus song. And I was like, wow, this guy's really good. And they're like, well, yeah, he's only been doing this for a couple of years now. So there is this sort of global sense that people are aware. I also think they pick up on the N-word. And there are stores in Malawi, and there are ways in which that word is over in Great Britain. And people are like, well, we don't have the same history that you have. But I keep thinking once you sort of know the history of, well, that's what they allege.
Right.
That's what they allege.
Well, I was just going to say, like, white supremacy is global.
It's global.
It's global.
That's white privilege
White
is global.
privilege is global.
That's right.
Right.
And so in many ways, what I'm saying is that this is about systems, and the language becomes part of that system. And what is it about that word that we're clamoring to hang on to? That's what I keep asking. And I say there's so many things that we pull from hip-hop, but I'd also like to add that there's some other things that we shouldn't necessarily perpetuate in hip-hop.
Right.
There's a whole lot of capitalism
Yes.
and this way in which your identity is associated with how much you can hang around your neck and how many women you can have and how many, yachts you can ride on. And there's a lot of misogyny and there's a lot of homophobia in there. So I would hope that we're not picking and choosing, that we would look at the whole, and not all hip-hop.
Right.
Because I understand this is not all hip-hop, but I'm saying if we're picking and choosing the ways in which we've been we haven't been so innovative in terms of representing women differently.
Right.
I mean, we're just now evolving to that. And there are some really complicated issues that I'd like to tease out relative to gender in the N-word, because this is primarily a conversation about boys and men. And when we talk about what's up, my homie, this is men talking to men.
Right.
Now, women use that and they engage in the conversation, but it's not nearly the kind of way that I think a lot of brown boys sort of posture as a kind of masculinity demonstration. That's a conversation that I haven't quite been able to have and want to have, and am very interested in the ways in which this use of the word is in fact gendered as well as racialized.
Yes, this is the Midnight Marauder show, so you can talk about that, Dr. Lester.
Yes.
We ain't stopping.
We're going to keep going.
Word
You
up.
know, we were talking the other day about the perpetuation of the word, you know, and really looking at, I was examining, you know, and again, as a social activist and someone who's invested in the community, really looking at different psychological tactics that are used, right, in order from the oppressor to the oppressed, and really looking at the psychology of this and how you do it amongst, you know, different ways and different things. One of the main tactics is that you embed the thought that you do it to yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here you have, you know, say like the white slavers were calling the black slaves this word. I can't even say it. I won't even say it.
Mm-hmm.
They call them this word. and
Endearingly,
eventually-
too. Endearingly.
And it's back and forth. So then you're confused. You're conflicted inside, right? Like you're conflicted inside now because he says it when he whips you up, then he says it when you're doing a good job, right? So now you are confused, right? And then let's say freedom is granted somewhere. I mean, this is a very horrible piece of narration of history here. But you go on and you decide, well, you know, I'm going to embrace that word. I'm going to own it now, right? Not because they said it to me, but because I'm going to overcome that, right? I'm going to overcome it. And I'm going to own it. And so now I'm going to go in my community, I'm going to say it. And it's not going to mean the same thing because I'm taking my power back. I'm taking my power back as a black man. I'm taking my power back as a black woman. And no one is going to stop me from doing that. So I'm just going to say it. And where I'm going to mean it has a term of endearment. And I'm just going to keep rolling with that.
And make lots of money
and make
making
lots
that,
of
if
money
I'm
doing
thinking of
it,
Paul Mooney
right? So we're
and-
feeding one another,
That's
right?
right.
So here we are, we're feeding
Richard Pryor.
one another. This is what Richard Pryor weigh-ins. Let's bring that up in just a minute.
Yeah.
Try to-
Comedy.
Comedy.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we are now. Now we're saying it amongst one another. And who's laughing?
Right.
Right? The people that brought you the word in the first place.
And they don't have to say it.
And they don't have to say it because
Right.
why? You're poisoning yourself.
That's right. Well, there goes my Maya Angelou.
There it
It's
is.
poison no matter what. And if you could make it positive, and I keep thinking there's so many ways that black folks are creative and innovative. And this whole term of endearment part, I don't recall starting until about, NWA came out. Now, there may be some
Did it come out
history
of Compton?
earlier.
I heard they came out of Compton.
Did it? But was that like not? was that
was a really
like
bad
night,
joke right there.
like oh okay, all right.
NWA,
I'm
straight
not
out of Compton.
I'm sorry.
To be
Hip, Dr.
Right.
Lester.
So you can school me on that then. So
Well,
tell
I
me,
mean-
when did it make that
Well,
kind
actually,
of like,
you know what? I
You're
wouldn't.
connected right there, though. Right. Go ahead.
Okay.
I mean, in terms of hip hop, not
Well,
too much.
The Last Poets.
Not
The Last Poets.
right.
Well, but the Last Poets, though,
Right.
if you recall, the Last Poets were not using that as a term of endearment, though. I'm thinking of all that from their most famous CD. They were using that as a way of exercising that out of passive people who wouldn't embrace revolution.
Are scared of revolution.
Who were
Right.
scared of revolution. That's
Right.
right.
Yeah, right.
What had made you
Right.
passive is that you became that, and you wore your three-piece suit like Barack Obama, Leroy Jones talked about in The Dutchman. So he was saying, take that out of you and get up, because the revolution is not going to be there if you're sitting on the couch eating watermelon and fried chicken. So I would check out the use of that. And even Nikki Giovanni, Sonia Sanchez, others who used that were not using it necessarily. They were using it the way it's been used on us disparagingly. So, I stand to be corrected, but in the stuff that I've looked at, it was really about a kind of negative image that needed to be exorcised so that you didn't become this manifestation of double consciousness and later what Patricia Williams calls triple consciousness for women. So yes, the slave masters talked about their slaves quite endearingly,
Right.
in the same way that the people in the help talked about the maids endearingly.
Oh,
They
man.
loved them. They
that
loved them,
movie
and the
pissed
people
me
that
off.
had mammies loved the mammies. The mammies were like members of their families, except the mammies were neglecting their own families.
Right.
Look at Miss Breedlove in The Bluest Eye.
Yeah.
She beats up Piccola because Piccola knocks something down, and when the pie gets all over the white little girl, she goes over and comforts the little white girl, because that's what I'm saying is scary. And there are so many manifestations of that sort of intra-racism and intra-hatred that potentially manifest itself in these sort of psychological ways that we're not even aware of. And if we go back to Woodson and the miseducation of the Negro, there are lots of ways when we talk about education is the key. Depends on how you've been educated. And trust me, I didn't know all this when I was studying and getting all my degrees. A lot of this became independent study.
Right.
Yes.
But that's responsibility, and that's also thinking and not just absorbing what's around you. Like that young man that I mentioned in high school who, after the talk, came up and said, and he was almost shaking and in tears, I don't know how to stop using this. I don't know how to stop using it because everybody in my community, everybody in my family uses it. I don't know how to stop. That's scary. And that young man is in high school.
Drops
Okay,
mic.
okay,
Baseline.
Okay, I don't know. We might be ready for some music. We might be ready for some music, y'all.
Hello?
Can you hear?
I think so.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can
Yeah,
hear you.
I think it's about time to get some music.
Yeah,
I know that was
yes.
definitely hard hitting.
Yeah, man, we ain't, man. Y'all, everybody out here listening.
Yo, thank you so much for listening. You know, I know that we have some first-time listeners, so thank you for tuning in.
Yes.
And hit us up on Twitter with your thoughts.
Talk to us. Talk to
Manu
us.
Marauder. We're definitely, here for the people and want to hear your thoughts on the subject. And if you have any questions for Dr. Lester, we're going to jump into that in the 1 o'clock hour.
We are back.
Yes. We got into that Kendrick Lamar remix of Dear Moleskine with Jay Electronica, and that was Public Enemy. Some of y'all don't remember this. Brothers gonna work it out. Word up.
Is that an age thing now? Some of you
out.
don't remember that? Hey, I know I'm the only one with gray hair in here. Right.
See, Dr. Lester, they like to tease me for being old. So
Oh, okay. All
I
right.
don't know.
Yeah.
So
All right.
I like to see them try to go at you. You know?
Well, some things get better with age,
Dr.
though.
Lester.
Some things get better with age. I think I'm a whole
like
lot
fine wine.
smarter than I used to be. Oh, thank you.
Same. I'm a big wine person.
I think I'm a lot. I think I'm more aware than I was before.
Word.
And I think that
Word.
again, which I said earlier, sometimes makes you not so happy when you're aware of stuff.
Consciousness definitely comes with a price.
That's it. Doesn't make
really
you any
does.
happier. It
Nope.
makes you happy when you see it enacted.
Yes.
And when there's a ripple effect like this show, and people are actually thinking about it and being more aware, and they're thinking about the language they're using, and not just falling blindly into it because that's all they know.
And that's what brings us joy here on the Manu Marauders.
Joyful.
People thinking. People
Yes,
think. Speaking
yes.
of thinking, what's going on?
Thinking
in the
is
world?
hard, though.
Thinking.
Oh
Thinking
man,
is
it requires
hard.
a lot.
Work.
Make us think.
Oh man!
Okay.
Speaking of joy and
Yes.
thinking, we have
We do have the cipher going on right now.
Yes.
So first thing on my mind. Sorry to all the fellas out there, but Eva Mendes is pregnant with
That's
Ryan
what I
Gosling.
heard.
Yeah.
Hey,
I'm kind of
somebody-
broken because
they shot a club up.
Yo,
Somebody shot
she's
the club
like
up.
7 months too.
She hit
looks
that.
amazing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyways, that was breaking my heart, so I just have to put that out there. But
Hey,
considering
easy on the buzzer too. Like we don't want to,
buzzer?
All right. So, first and foremost, so for Sean, MC out of Cali, he has officially signed with Nas's Mass Appeal Records, which is a really big thing. Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's obviously he's been here a couple times, been rolling around with Murs, done a lot of paid dues shows. So I'm really excited for him. He says that he has an album coming out, and that according to him, he was underrating himself and the entire future of hip hop before getting the infamous call from Nas. So how do you feel about him getting signed? And then who else would you add to Mass Appeal Records if you had a choice, Miss Daniel?
Wow. Oh my gosh. Okay. One of all, that's the first time I heard this news. So how
Yes.
exciting! I'm excited just because he happens to be one of my favorites. So I'll be looking forward to that. Who would I add? Okay. Honestly, I honestly would add Rocky Tirade. I'd really
Yes.
like to see Brother Rocky get that call.
Okay,
I'd really like to
I
see
support
that call.
I support that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Are
that's
we
it.
excluding Dr. Lester?
No,
He doesn't
Dr.
know.
Lester has some thoughts. He might get down with Nas.
No, all I remember is that we studied Nas when he was going to name his album the N-word. And we looked at, remember that?
Ooh.
You don't remember that?
All right, go ahead and speak your 30 seconds on
30
that.
seconds.
I do
Okay.
remember that.
Well, there was controversy, and there were lots of people who spoke up for him, and they went to that whole "we are taking it back." And he ended up not calling it that, but having a song on there that was referencing the word. But I think in the end, he understood that there were contentious kind of responses to that, and people thought it was a commercial ploy.
No, that's the buzzer.
That's
was
the
your
buzzer.
30
It's usually a
seconds.
lot louder. It's usually a lot louder. All right,
We applaud you.
DN3, your thoughts?
Oh,
Sean.
for sure. Oh, yeah. I don't think. Yeah, he definitely deserves it. He's going to be on the label with your old Droog.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
So you know.
What?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, shameless plug here. You know, I mean, I happen to have a song with Fashawn, me, Megan Rand, and Mr. Miranda. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Shameless plug. Right.
Shameless plug.
Right. So where's that buzzer? But yeah, I mean, I'm really proud of the dude. He said pretty much like before the whole Nas thing happened, he was really discouraged with rap, and he wasn't getting excited about the future with hip hop. And then he was out doing things, and then he just got that call, and it lit that fire. So I'm really excited to see what he has going on. Next, one of my favorite artists, Miles Davis. So Don Cheadle is gonna make a movie. So he's taking Miles Davis's legacy and furthering the scope, and he has a campaign video already on Indiegogo, and he's explaining that people like Nas, Kendrick Lamar, and a couple other people are going to be on the soundtrack. He's working closely with his nephew Vincent Wilburn and his son Aaron Davis on the film, which will chronicle the life of Miles Davis. You know, obviously we've been seeing a whole bunch of biopics coming up, the one on James Brown coming up, the one on Jimi Hendrix, you know, and obviously we want to see them fulfill the life of the greats. But I'm actually really excited for this one because the soundtrack that it seems like he's putting to it, along with the work that's going into it, working closely with the actual family, I think it definitely has a lot of success. Dr. Lester, what do you think?
Well, I think it's a way of making this younger generation, and I'm not disparaging younger generations, but I do have children, and they're very unaware of some of these sort of classic, important musical milestones. So I think it's important that you have some of these movies to tell at least one side of these important people who have defined music for us, particularly American music. So I think that's fantastic. You know, I know the controversy over Aaliyah and Whitney Houston.
Yep.
People know their lives, but do we know their lives? You know, what other things about them do we not know?
All right, Miss Danielle.
I'm excited.
I'm excited.
That's all I got. And I love Don Cheadle. Like, he's done some incredible work, so I'm glad to see him casted in that role. And I heard he's learning to play, so it'll be as authentic as possible. So I'm definitely going to check that out.
Well, and hopefully it'll be as great as Ray.
Ray was a great one.
Yeah, that was fantastic. It introduced a whole generation of people to the music of Ray Charles, and also the gift of Ray Charles, but also that other side of Ray Charles that many people tend not to want to think about. The real side, the other real side.
DN3.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say anything different from what everybody's saying. I'm excited about it. I mean, the dude, he's taking his acting craft, Don Cheadle, seriously. He's learning how to play, you know, chops and stuff, and
Getting into character.
yeah, it's my first time hearing about this soundtrack too. So I got excited about that. I'm supporting that.
Yeah, the way that he had put it, he said Miles Davis referred to his music as social music, the music of its time. And instead of simply crowdfunding the project with fans, Davis's idea of music of its time will frame the Miles Ahead soundtrack. So therefore, it's going to be peppered people from Miles Davis to Jay-Z to Kendrick Lamar to Dre to Nas and everyone far and in between. People who are obviously, you know, impacting the generation now. All right, so in other news, so Eminem was the first artist, mind you, white rapper if you want to include that, but he sold out, I think it's Ireland's Wembley Stadium. He sold it out in 4 hours, mind you. 4 hours. He even brought out Dr. Dre, and yeah, in 4 hours. Just go ahead and let that sink in. I mean, that's a lot of people. I think it holds over... let's see, Yankee Stadium holds over 50,000 people. It was, I think, almost 3 times the amount of that. I don't know
Talking to the mic, girl.
I am. I am. I don't know.
I can hear you.
Wow.
Wow. People.
But anyways, that I think that's just absolutely phenomenal. I mean, not only for, you know, a hip hop artist at that, but white hip hop artist.
Right.
Danielle, what do you think about that?
I think that's incredible.
Eminem making a comeback.
I would have gone to see him in concert maybe 2 albums ago, to be quite honest. Not too impressed with the last 2 albums myself.
I know that verse on that Busta Rhymes
but
track, though.
Yeah. I could get behind that. But
But he'll be doing some of this old stuff too, though, and so people will want to go to that because they want to hear that.
Yeah,
Because even
and
when you got
that's
new
true.
stuff, you don't just do your new stuff because people don't know it yet.
that's very
I
true.
actually thought his last thing was pretty good, though. Was the last with Rihanna? Was that one of the last ones that Eminem
Oh,
did?
that was
The Monsters.
yeah.
Yeah, that's on her album. Yeah.
That's on her album, not
Yeah,
on
that's
his.
on her album.
Okay,
Mhm.
that's a pretty decent piece.
Yeah,
isn't it?
it's okay.
Well,
like,
you know,
nah.
he has a facility with language, though. I mean, I love. He said
really
my
does.
head has gotten so big I have to see a shrink. I mean, there are ways
He
in which
really
people don't
does.
care about language.
He
Yeah.
has a gift to flex words.
Yes, and you know that sort of
And that's a gift.
that's a gift. I can tell we don't have a whole lot of support for Eminem in this room.
No.
I love him.
I love
Okay.
Eminem.
I used to have posters of him on my wall. It might still be somewhere in my
Right,
closet.
and
All right, so it's D&3's turn,
D3
obviously.
has an Eminem poster. Don't
No,
be frightened,
it's-
D3.
Wow, y'all gonna do me greasy like
Anyway.
you know it is what it is, man. I mean, when it comes to Eminem, I mean basically we know what it is. I mean, the dude he is a great rapper. You know what I'm saying? I think just like everybody knows, by him being white, what I mean, and being a great rapper, by him having that draw, this is it's not surprising that this is going to happen. You know what I'm saying? Like in the perfect world, I mean, M is dope. I mean, he should be, billing like he is in a perfect world. So, I mean, more power to him. You know what I'm saying?
but there will be there will be some haters though.
It will be.
Always.
Right?
Always.
There
It
will be
will
some
be.
haters.
Yeah.
All right. And then last but not least, let's go ahead and finish out the cipher. A topic that's obviously hitting close to the subject we are on right now. Common recently spoke on Lord Jamar's comments on white rappers, okay? And he says that he kind of was speaking on Justin Bieber's use of the N-word. And he says that he doesn't think that the singer was being demeaning. He said he thinks that, hip-hop culture is one of those that's supposed to bridge people from different nationalities together. And he said, and I quote, he's like, I know how much Justin Bieber he respects the black culture. He surrounds himself with black people, so I don't think it was something that, to be honest, I've never seen the tapes, but they got the feedback of it. But I don't think it was something he was saying wholeheartedly to demean a black person. From what I didn't see the tape, but from what I pick up, I don't think, and if he did, he was just in a place where he just didn't know. Like he must have been raised in a place where he just didn't know. Because he obviously gravitated towards a black culture, so he has to have a certain amount of respect for it, for you to be a part of it and want to be a part of it. And I quote, Danielle, go.
Kama just lost some cool points with me, and he's like my dude. But honestly, like that's a perfect example of class privilege and being able to say the word and get away with it, right? Have it to be something acceptable, and to try to pass it off on Justin Bieber's age. The dude was like 15 at the time when he said it. Look, if this brother was already trying to gravitate towards black culture, he knew what time it was. That young man is successful because he is intellectual, he is hardworking, and because his parents put him on the know or at an early age. Otherwise, he wouldn't be where he's at. So I don't think that's an excuse at all.
Well,
No.
Canada's not too far from the U.S.
It ain't.
And I'd also like to know, and I'm a big fan of Judge Judy, and one of the things I've learned as a Judaism, not Judaism, but a Judaism is how does he know how Justin Bieber's thinking? Unless you're in his head. So he can't tell us what people intend or not intend.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
And Common complicates things because he's the one that told Maya Angelou he understands this notion, but he's still going to use it. And he said that in ESPN, interviews. So, Common, I'm confused.
We're confused, brother.
Yeah, right? DN3?
Well, yeah. I mean, man. Come on, bridge cultures, not like that, homie. Well, I think it says for itself that if he didn't see the tape, he doesn't know the context. So he's going off of, what
hearsay.
Right, exactly. So I think that's like probably half the issue with that. I saw it. Right. I heard it, whatever, YouTube, TMZ, and I mean, like kids make jokes and stuff like that. But nah, I'm not giving him a pass for that.
Yeah. He said, what Lord Jamar was saying was pretty much that Justin Bieber's leeching off black music. He said, like a lot of other white artists are doing, but listen to his whole sound. Listen who he's trying to appeal to and the influence. He's got that white fan base, but he's making essentially black music. I don't know. But yeah, so that was the whole topic. We do have a Twitter follower, I think it's Rashad Thomas or Black Yoda Yogi. He said hip-hop accepts Eminem because he's a white N-word. And then he said, but Justin Bieber is not a white N-word because he doesn't represent hip-hop. How do you feel about that tweet?
Ha.
Rashad's the man. Shout out to Rashad. I know
Thanks
Wow.
for listening, Rashad.
Wow. Hey, that's Dr. Lester. Before we cut into some music, I mean,
Okay. Wow.
You know what? If we can, let's savor on that for a minute, and
Yes.
when we get back, we're going to definitely answer that. We also have the Brother John Humble hit me up, so I want to go over that too. But
Yeah.
Rashad, we'll definitely jump into that when we get back. But before we go to some music, I'd really just like to enter a music segment with a moment of silence for the people of Palestine right now. Has a people that have been affected in this room by colonialism, genocide. We just really like to take a moment for you guys to sit out there and reflect on what's going on over there. If you pray, pray. If you send good thoughts, send good thoughts. Whatever it is you do, we're just going to take a moment, be with that, and then we'll be back.
Yes.
And we back.
Did you know that if the wealth of the world's 5 richest families was confiscated, no human being would have to starve again?
Word.
So where they at and where do they live?
Right? Let's smash hunger. That's nice.
shout out to the Mid New Marauder lady.
Lady.
We should name her.
We need to give her a name.
Yeah.
Lady
Yeah.
M. Let's call her Lady M.
Yo.
Okay, I'm done with that. Actually, that kind of has a ring to it.
Yeah.
Anyways, we do have a couple tweets, and obviously we dropped off with a couple of Rashad's comments, and also he tweeted earlier. White supremacy taught society that the N-word is negative. As a black man using the N-word, it's a form of self-determination.
Who said that?
Rashad did. I
Is
want to
he-
know, like, self-determination.
He's trolling.
Hi, Rashad.
He's trolling.
You know, I don't know. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. I don't know if I personally can embrace that word in alignment with self-determination or self-empowerment. I guess it does go back to how much power you want to give the word over you. I guess I can see it in that way and where he's coming from. But I don't know, for some reason that negates the reality, for me, in my opinion, of white supremacy.
Well, and keep in mind keep in mind that the word is not about you or me personally. This is an identity that is about us and about people who look like us. So I could see if you could take a name, as many people have done who are artists, you know, even in hip hop world, you take a name and you name yourself. This is not a name that I can wear any differently than you can wear, Danielle, or you can wear, DJ.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying. It's hard to empower something if it's not, to feel empowered. You know, Ntozake Shange changed her name from Paulette Williams. Amira Baraka changed his name from Leroy Jones, but that's about an
Rick
individual.
Rubin wants to change his name.
Right.
Yes.
Well, and you know,
That's probably
people
all-
change their
What is it,
names, but
Buddhist now or something?
how do you change your name for a collective? How do you change your name for a collective? That's what I'm saying. You can
Right.
certainly change your thinking about it, but I don't know if you can change your name.
The only way Rashad has a point, I think, is if us as blacks aren't looked at or as perceived as oppressed anymore. That's the only way. Like, logically, I can see that being a point.
Well, and keep in mind also that the word is not about the naming, because it's also about an experience. When Common, you know, starts that ESPN special, he talks about talking about the use of the word in sports, and they're wanting to ban it, and et cetera, et cetera. He talks about that name was a name for individuals, not necessarily individuals, but people. So those 5 girls that walked into the church in Birmingham, they were called that word by the KKK. One of them came out, the other 4 were decapitated. So it wasn't about me, it wasn't about you, it wasn't about the names of those girls. They are nameless, except they go down in history from that perspective of white supremacy as these animals or these things that really aren't human beings. So that's what I'm saying. I guess you could empower it if you name yourself. You could change your name from the name you were given at birth, but that empowers you. I don't know how that empowers a whole community or a whole population.
So I have something from the Brother John Humble. He's tuned in. And he wrote, the subject has a lot to do with cultural perception, and not just in the context of ethnic background, but social economic status. The great late Malcolm X once taught us what was called a house Negro and a field Negro is differentiating, the two. The field Negroes had a camaraderie that the house Negro did not understand, as did the house Negro have camaraderie with the master that the field Negroes didn't understand nor experienced. In my opinion, this topic has more to do with the cultural perception in which you were brought up in. Historically, the house Negro is prone toward more diplomatic change, whereas the field Negro would be more willing to take on non-diplomatic change. I would not assume to think that every person who uses the N-word is not conscious of the history. In fact, I would go as far as saying that a good number of people using the word use it to irritate the current reigning establishment. An example would be when Tupac put an acronym to the word, calling it Never Ignorant Getting Goals Accomplished. After that, the paradigm shifts once again, not only making non-diplomatic type individuals want to use it, but personify the culture of the rebellious field Negro with the intentions to overthrow the master. Thoughts?
That's very thoughtful.
It's very thoughtful. John Humble is
That's very thoughtful.
deep brother. Deep brother.
Although I do wonder about when we start acronyming things, that's a lot of energy. And I wonder if how has that become part of our cognitive connect?
Wow.
That we somehow have embraced that. But I can tell you, in the conversations that I've had in my local environment with high school, middle school teachers, and even college students, students at these different levels, that's not what they're embracing in that word.
And let me inject.
They don't know why they're using it.
Let me inject too. You said the word energy. I mean, like, it seems like it takes no energy to use that word, especially in the hip hop context. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, that's all I want to say on that. Though, but
It's dead energy. It's just dead.
yeah.
Right. Well, it doesn't take any energy to use a cliche. It doesn't take energy to use a stereotype or a caricature. Those things have been put into place for us. Now, they have purposes because they help us maintain a certain kind of order. But I'm not telling people what they can and can't do in the conversations that I have. If you're aware of it, then you're aware of it. Nobody's telling you not to stop using it.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. So, again, this is about choice. And I mentioned this in the break, that each of us here has made a conscious choice not to use the word that we're referencing. I don't think we need to use the word in order for people to know. It doesn't give it any more power by our not using it, because it doesn't mean that nobody else is using it. But it's just as Dr. Maya Angelou says, you know, I don't want you using it in my presence. I tell my 22-year-old and 25-year-old, don't use cuss words in my presence. I don't care what you do outside my presence. I mean, I care.
Right.
But I have no control over that. But
in
in this particular situation, I would prefer that you not use it.
Right. No, it's crazy because, you know, all through high school and all through college, like, a lot of my friends, you know, they were black and Hispanic. I'm not saying I didn't have white friends, but, you know, I grew up in a really hard neighborhood, so I guess I just always...
That's just how we roll.
Yeah, exactly. That's how we roll. And growing up, I was always told, like, oh, Mimi, like, you're an honorary black person, so, like, you could go ahead and say the word. And I'm like, I don't feel like I still, like, I mean, although all my friends feel like I can say it around them, like, I still would rather not. Just out of respect, just out of the simple fact that I just don't feel I have any type of right to say that word. Whether my friends think it's okay, I'd rather just not, you know, put that thought in my head that it is.
Yes, Dr. Lester.
Well, and there goes the choice again. And I keep thinking for those white people out there, and not every white person, but those white people out there in the world who feel like this is the last thing that they can't do. I believe it's did Chris Rock say that? That what is there about that they're clamoring on to say it and calling this sort of thing about a double standard? Well, there is no double standard because all black people don't use the word.
Right.
So there's no double standard there. And as Tim Weiss would say, well, American history is a double standard. Things have never been equal. Things have never been just.
Never.
So what is it about this word that somehow shifts the focus? Well, if black people can say it, black people should examine how they say it. But this is a conversation that happens in multiple communities, or should be happening in multiple communities. Right. And then when we leave the conversation, then we should be at least aware of some things that we weren't aware of. And then if we choose to use it, you know, Rashad, if we choose to use it, then that's on us to use it. I mean, you're not going to be locked up or, you know, put in handcuffs for using it.
Right.
Audience, it is not a double standard.
And there is no generational divide either. There's no generational divide.
Oh, and also Rashad reminded us that we didn't get back to the Eminem JB topic. Just
Okay.
saying.
Well, okay. Hold on. I want to give my take on the word real quick, and it is a conscious choice that I don't use it. One, because that's just how we were raised. Two, because how I was raised was that it's something that black people said, right? And it's like just something that they called themselves. And it didn't take, it took me a while to understand that in my own color consciousness what that really meant. And it just isn't okay. Like, I don't even like saying it. I don't even, so it is a conscious choice, and I am very aware of who I keep company with, and how they choose to use it. I'm not here to tell you not use it, don't use it, or whatever.
And I don't use the B word or the C word or the F word.
Right.
There are lots of words that I don't use.
But
It's not because I
exactly.
can't say them.
Right.
I
I just choose not to. And I think there's just a lot of pain associated with the word that I'd rather not associate myself with at the end of the day.
So,
Right.
so you're saying that holds more weight than anybody, like or all of your peers or something like that, or like in the hip hop circle, or that like that's saying that, hey, you're honorary black, or you know what I'm saying, doesn't matter and anything.
Absolutely, because and here's the thing, is because all of our ancestors were beaten, all of our ancestors were raped. We live on stolen land, built by a stolen people, and the only way to truly honor that is to be conscious of that. And I'm going to choose to give my energy to something positive. So you can go ahead and you can say, like, it's okay for you to say it, or I don't care if you say it, or I'm going to say it. That's nice, but guess what? I'm not going to, because I'm going to respect history, right? And to me, I'm choosing to honor you today and your ancestors of yesterday by not using that word.
Well, and if I'm in your presence and you ask me not to use it, then I want to respect you in the present and not use it.
Right.
So don't use the F word around me.
Right.
And I don't mean the
Me.
four-letter word. I mean the three-letter word.
Right.
Or the C word or the B word. I prefer that you don't use that around me. That doesn't mean you can't say it.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. So I'm not taking away your power, and I'm censoring you in my space. Now, you can choose to continue to do that, but I can continue to get out of your presence.
Exactly.
So there's choice on all of these levels, but I think the issue is that people aren't really thinking about this, and they're just using it, or they're trying to embrace it. I mean, I heard a young, very, very aware poet said he uses it because he doesn't like people telling him not to use it. That's an odd response to me. I'm using it. It's like I'm going to do exactly what somebody tells me not to do, just because I'm going to run a red light because there's the light tells me to stop.
I think it's something spiritual with that type of philosophy.
You do?
I really do. There's something deeper.
What
than,
was Rashad's Eminem?
It's
Because
deeper.
we talked about this a little
Yeah,
bit.
we did. Here's my response, Rashad. Is I guess I never connected JB with hip hop. I did, however, connect Eminem with the hip hop language, the facility with words, the performance, and Justin Bieber seemed to be coming out of a different space, and it has nothing to do with where they grew up or what they were entitled to. For me, it was just the performance itself.
Okay.
All right. Hip hop accepts Eminem because he is a white N-word. And JB is not a white N-word because he doesn't represent hip hop. So is that kind of like the way I think about that is, in relation to what John Humble was saying, is like you have like the house Negro and then you have the field Negro. It's kind of like that same mentality, I guess. Where one is embraced and accepted in some more form, shape, or fashion, and the other is not. But I don't know. I mean, I guess I mean, what does that even mean to be a white?
Right.
What does that
What does
mean?
it
Well,
mean?
see that's what's
What does that
confusing
even
about
mean?
that. That's what's confusing
What
about that.
does
You know
it
why?
mean?
Well,
Read,
because
Rashad.
because even with the example that was used earlier about the house one and the field one, they were still those at the end of the day. They were still not possessors of their own destiny. They were still slaves. So
yes.
we have lots of evidence where slaves, particularly as they were trying to claim some individual human dignity, would compare, my master is better than your master. That's an insane conversation when you've got to talk about you both have masters, but you're talking about one is better than the other.
Yeah.
You still can't control your own destiny. So the fact that one was outside and one was inside, they were still controlled. So, I don't think we can overlook
When you get
the
back to
fact-
the root of
When you
it.
get back to the root, and I think when we get back to the root of Justin Bieber and Eminem, they're still white males. no matter what their music is. And Macklemore, they are still white males, and they have a certain kind of privilege that's associated with whiteness, whether we know their class backgrounds or not.
Absolutely.
There it is. Drop it to this. DN3, you got some piece on this?
Oh, well, I mean, not on that. Nah, he sealed that right there. I want to move on to, like, the next thing we were talking about in one of the breaks was this whole censorship thing here. It is an instance of what you're allowed to say and what you can't say, because if capitalism, I guess, persists that in art that you can't use, I guess, the F word or maybe the J word or the K word, but the N word can fly all day. What's the deal with that? You know what I mean? So, I mean, it's just like growing up in hip-hop and seeing this thing, you know, like especially listening to NWA and even like the whole story with 50 Cent and what's his name, the guy that runs Interscope. What's his name?
Wait, what was the question?
The guy that runs Interscope.
I know we just brought this up on the Cypher the other day. Oh, well. Anyways, but what about him?
Right, yeah. It's basically, you know, 50 Cent, you know, he's talking like N-word all day and all like that. But when he started saying like the K word, kike or whatever like that, you got to get that out of here.
Yeah, you can't say that.
Right.
But it is beeped on in media. I mean, we just had the controversy this week of it being in the New York paper where the guy uses that when he's identifying with Obama or he's trying to defend Obama. So there is a kind of censorship. It is beeped out.
Jimmy Iovine. I'm sorry. Okay. Jimmy Iovine.
Right.
Yeah, that's the guy.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, but here's the thing, though. I think like me and Rashad were talking about this morning. I was watching Boys in the Hood because it's on Netflix. Shout out Netflix. Okay, and I was watching it, and I was noticing during the subtitles where it's spelled ER versus GA, and I was like, wait a minute, that's not how he said it. That's not how he said it. You know, so it's like.
And my response to that was what? Do you remember? Because I responded to that because it was an interesting.
I missed that. Yeah.
It was, you know, it's sort of like spell check. Many of us use spell check when we're using our computers now, and the spell, if you tried to type up N-I-G-G-A, it would come up as a misspelled word. If you probably typed in N-I-G-G-R, it would probably come as a spelled word. So there's something about those who control.
Yeah,
well, but there's something about whose standard it is, just like if I do a lot of work with black vernacular, and every single word, if I'm quoting from Zora Neale Hurston, comes up as a misspelled word. But that's not really a misspelled word. It's a word that's spelled correctly phonetically. Right. So in many ways, there's a system that's in place that has somehow made that word uniform, right, and the variations don't fit. Right. So the spell check means it needs to be added to the spell check.
How do you think, you know, if we look at like how it's been transcended into a term of endearment, you know, and if really, you know, wanting to get to a space of choosing to not use a word, you know, is it through general education? Is it, you know, what are the methods of prevention? But even before we go there, you know, I was thinking about something earlier at the break, and we touched on it briefly about looking at the power structure, the power cycle of an abuser and a domestic violence victim who transcends and becomes a survivor nonetheless. And for me, in my observation, the use of this word really is in alignment with that. And I think for me personally, and this is only my opinion, and my opinion only, I think by continuing to use the word, it is an embrace of your victimhood, right? I feel like it's an embrace of an overall historical victimhood. And then when you try to transcend it, you become a survivor, right? So here I am. I'm going to turn it into something that's empowering, and it's going to mean me as a black person and me and my black man and me and, you know, being a black woman. You know, it becomes about an empowerment of you as a black person. But when do you become someone that isn't a victim, isn't a survivor, but that is a thriver, right? And that chooses to transcend all of that and heal.
Well, and I would hope that your survival is based in many different dimensions and aspects. And that
right.
I guess the question becomes, why is that one aspect of your survival? Mm-hmm. Is there something about black manhood? Is there something about blackness that can only be defined through some association with that word? And as you were saying that, what I kept thinking of is that, and correct me because it just came in my head as you were saying that, there is this sense that when we're using that word, we're using it with someone else, that we are not self-identifying. Like you're not calling yourself that. because nobody's
Right.
this is not an issue about what we call ourselves individually. This
Right.
is usually how we're interacting with other people. And what my sense, and this is where my, Judge Judaism comes in, is how do you know what's in people's heads? And I've seen
Right.
people call things, particularly as you point out in this sort of context of abuse, where you don't always jump back and defend that.
Right.
You don't always stop it when somebody has offended you. You just keep on. And so to the person who is saying it, it may seem that you're accepting that.
Yeah.
But I've been in places where people have said things about women that I should have said something about, disparaging, or said something about something that I should have jumped up. But my life would be continually jumping up and defending things if I had to stop people every time they said something offensive that was derogatory or disparaging. So I guess what I'm saying is that in many ways, it's about how we think about other people, less about what we think about ourselves. Does that make sense in the context of what you're saying?
Yeah.
That this is not about naming ourselves individually.
Right.
It is because we could change our names individually, as I said,
course.
with some of the artists who have done that, or hip hop who, I mean, the whole identity in many ways is based on this sort of renaming. I mean,
Yeah.
Melvin or.
Ooh, he used the government.
Government just got dropped.
It's all
It's about renaming, right?
It's good.
Right, right.
Melvin.
But
It's
you
all
did-
good.
But you didn't name a whole community, though. Right? Did you name a whole
Community of
community?
Melvins?
Nah.
That's
just
what
me.
I'm
And,
saying.
that's
Look
me
out.
and my pops. So,
That's
you know what I mean?
that's where the self-empowerment can come when you
Right.
can do that and you have the power to change it from the slave's name. And we know the history of that. But how do you change a whole group? That's like changing the color of the sky.
I don't know that you can, to be honest, because I think the history is rooted there. Like, no matter what, you cannot wipe out history.
Well, and if we
right?
were
You can't.
treated the same way, then I could see us saying, yeah, you can change that. But I keep saying, how do we measure progress? If we are still, holding up pictures of Barack Obama with a noose around his neck and a Confederate flag, how much progress have we made?
Right.
That's what I asked.
It's funny that you said history, because actually we got another tweet from Rashad, and he said American history is American mythology.
So is every history, though, Rashad. And as the African proverb says something about if lions could tell their stories, then we wouldn't have as many heroic hunters. And I think part of this conversation about the N-word is to consider an alternative history. Doesn't mean that anybody in this room is defined by the history that was created. It means that we're aware of it.
Right.
And you don't have to become that just
Well,
because
and
you're
that's the
defined
thing.
by it.
Exactly. And I think that's how we move towards prevention and a conscious choice to not use it if that's the decision you want to make.
Right.
Is that you quit living history and you start writing your story.
Well, and it is a hard conversation because I think of this in terms of slut shaming, which is a new term
Yes.
that I've come to understand. And it becomes very confusing for people who say, well, if
Confusing
women
for
were
me.
defined this way, and this was how patriarchy defined women, now women are doing that themselves. And I say the same thing relative to blackness. Does blackness mean that there are things that I can't do now? Or is blackness a way of opening up what my choices are? So that's what I'm saying. So is feminism opening up what the choices that women have? But the complicated question is, to what extent does it become a choice? Or have you just absorbed what you've been taught
Right.
that others have given you? And that's
Right.
where the N-word comes in. Have you just absorbed that and you think you're taking it back when in fact we don't know if you're taking it back or not? You could just be perpetuating it.
Wow. Hey, should we get TJ on the line?
Yeah.
All
Get
right.
Boss Man.
All right.
So we're going to have
Go ahead.
TJ Supa Hype on the line. He's,
The head of Radio Supa.
he's
And
our
then-
boss.
Shout out to Mystic Blue. She's tuned in. She's been tweeting.
Yes.
She's been tweeting throughout the whole thing. And also shout out to one of our new followers, Smiley Eyeless, who says, great show, digging the knowledge, perspective, and choice of music. So shout out to you guys. Of course, as always, thank you for the support. But I've really enjoyed today's topic.
It's been good.
It has been good.
Ooh, and Miss Rachel,
Aw,
she texted me and she said, as a lifelong Common fan, I am seriously disappointed in him. Her heart just broke over what the
But
brother
hey,
said.
you know what, girl? We're going to go see Foreign Exchange tonight, and your heart will be all right. Your heart will be all right.
Well, and people are complicated. That's
Yeah.
what we're not. This conversation shows that people and relationships are complicated,
Right.
and we are in no way trying to simplify or oversimplify something that's really complicated.
Right.
But the issue is that we're thinking about it and talking about it in ways that we haven't always had the opportunity or the resources
Absolutely.
to sort of do that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Do we-
hold on, I think
Do we got him?
Let me see. Yo, TJ, what's up?
Threezy, what's good, man? How you guys doing?
We're doing wonderful,
Boss man.
Yeah, man.
It's been a we live, we on the air.
We're live.
We
We're
are
live.
live and on the air.
Good. How you doing, Miss Mimi and Miss Danielle and Dr. Lester? It's been
Good.
a
We're
beautiful.
good. Thank you.
It's been a beautiful show. I've been listening to it and it's just, I mean, especially just hearing the different angles that Dr. Lester has been talking about the topic and stuff like that, and then of course just the eloquence in which he's been doing it. You know what I mean? Big salute and all that.
It's a great team here, so it's easy to do that because these are thoughtful and thinking people here. So kudos to all of you.
I ate my Wheaties this morning just so I could get my brain working.
Well, hold up, TJ. What's your question, bro?
Yeah, no, you know what?
Your
I guess I wanted to make a statement in terms of it, you know, and I think I spoke a little bit about it. It had to be probably earlier this week. I think I was telling a story to you guys where I was, I dropped my car off to get some work done, and I was walking, and there were some kids riding behind me, and the kids that were, they were, for the sake of the conversation, they were Caucasian kids, nice kids. So, they were coming up behind me on the sidewalk, and one of them said, hey, excuse me. And I said, okay, cool. So I stepped out of the way so he could drive by, and there was another one a little further back. And I stood there and I waited for him to pass because I saw him coming. So I stood there and I waited for him to pass, and he was like, okay, great. And they stopped somewhere a little bit in front of me, and I walked forward, and as I passed them again, after they had stopped, one of the younger kids who had to be somewhere around 10 years old, he said, thank you, kind sir. And I was like, okay, of course, no problem, thank you very much. And the kids were they were well-mannered, they were very well-mannered and all this other stuff, and I use that as the example because at 10 years old or whatever age they were, whatever age that kid was, the word nigga wasn't in his vocabulary, because if that word nigga was in his vocabulary, he would not have addressed me as thank you, kind sir. He would not have addressed me like in such eloquence, not even just like, hey, thanks. No, thank you, kind sir. He went out of his way to do that, which means that his parents couldn't have been putting this word in his vocabulary, or this negative stereotype of black man or the black race in this young man's vocabulary. So, I thought about that in terms of where we're at today, and it's like at 10 years old, this kid doesn't have it in his vocabulary. Now, at 20 years old, if this kid gets it in his vocabulary, it's clear that he's not getting it from his parents because his parents didn't put it in him. It would be in him at 10. That disrespect or that view would be there at 10 if his parents were giving it to him. So if he has this at 20, where is he learning it from? And it's like, I think about our hip-hop culture we have where, we sell records, and we sell records to everybody, and it's infiltrated every race raps. You have Asian rappers, and you have white rappers and black rappers and brown rappers and yellow rappers. You have rappers from every culture. And this hip hop has become like a world thing. It's been, something that we created that spread across the world. And it's just been interesting because everyone embraces this hip hop and we love it. And when we sell our CDs, we say, hey, please go download this wherever you're at, whatever race you are, please download our music, listen to our music. And I think about again this word, this N word that we use, and there's some of us that we can't even have a conversation without using this word. There's some of us that cannot go 24 hours without using this word in our vocabulary.
That sounds like a great experiment we should try. You should try that because I think that's how you become aware of it. Is mark it, but if it becomes so normalized, then you wouldn't notice that you're using it. Only somebody who doesn't use it perhaps would. Do you see what I'm saying? It could be an interesting social experiment to see if you could go for a day, kind of like fasting.
Right. Kind of some people don't realize how often they do use it up until they're trying not to.
It.
Right.
You know what? I think we should do that for the next show. So next week is going to be part 2. So during this week, if you're down with this challenge, I want you to hash mark every time you use that word.
Yes. Right.
And then let us know.
And get somebody to help you.
For a whole week. Like
do it as a buddy system. Do it as a buddy system.
Buddy system. Right.
Because typically you don't say the word by yourself,
system,
in a space. So have somebody mark it down. And I can tell you, I've done this with another well, in another context with the term "you guys,"
Oh, okay. Word.
and people have become more aware of that just
You know-
because you pointed out in a mixed group.
We're going to do that.
So,
TJ,
yeah.
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good social experiment.
So I hear what you're saying, and I was thinking about this because we were talking about this the other day, or you broke it down to
Yeah.
me, and I thought about it, and it's essentially if that young white man when 10 years from now, when he's 20, he starts to use that word and he's using it as a term of endearment, then yes, we as a hip hop and rap culture have indeed
Yeah.
sold that to him. We've packaged it and we've sold it, but at the same
Yeah.
time, that doesn't mean that it came from us, right? So just like with crack in the ghettos, that didn't come from us. It was
Yeah,
flown
yeah.
in. That was flown in, and it was given to us as a people.
Yeah.
And then our people turned around and sold that. And then now our people are the ones that are infected. And now
Yeah.
our people are the ones that are in jails. And who's, so looking at the origins of those things. And we did it to ourselves. It goes back to that. We did it to ourselves.
Well, people can either reject or accept whatever the environment has put
Correct.
before you. And I
Correct.
think there's always a choice. I mean, I grew up with all kinds of non-flattering images of the way black men behaved in families. I am making a choice not to be what I grew up with and witnessed. But there are others who don't do that. And that's what I'm saying is there is a level that you have to recognize that on some level you have a choice and you're not just perpetuating a system because the system is there and you're caught in this cycle you can't get out of. That becomes victimized.
Right. Exactly.
And I like what you said, Dr. Lester, in terms of our ability to accept or reject. I tell
Yes.
people a lot of times that when you get a gift, you have the choice on whether you're going to take that
Yep.
gift or keep that gift.
Yep.
If somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, TJ, you know what? You're a crackhead,"
Right.
I have the choice on whether I want to accept that gift or not.
Right.
And because I know that I'm not a crackhead,
Right.
then I don't accept the gift. I
Right.
don't accept the
Right.
negative gift. So it's like,
Right.
okay, well, you gave me the gift, but I didn't accept it because it doesn't apply to me.
Right. But that's a
so-
long process of evolution, though, because I'm thinking
Yes,
of the miseducation and the ways in which sometimes we don't know what we don't know until we get to a point where we recognize that this is not how I should be living or thinking. Because it can
Correct.
become so part of you, just like, Dr. Maya Angelou says something about the words become part of your upholstery and part of your clothes and part of your hair. Behavior can become like that if that's all you know, like the young man who says, I don't know how to stop doing this.
Right.
But at some point, he has recognized that it's something that he needs to stop doing. So
Right.
we,
TJ.
we've got to believe that we've got the power.
Yes.
Okay.
Yo,
We're going to wrap up with some final
Supa.
thoughts.
Thanks for calling in. Great thoughts and a
Yes.
great story, and also very inspirational. Because what it shows us is this is not quite as black and white, as young and old as people want to somehow say it is.
Yes.
Yes.
That there were whites who
Yes.
were part of the
Yes.
abolitionist movement. There are men who are part of the feminist movement. There are straights who are part of the LGBTQ movement. So it takes a community and a village to bring about this kind of change, and the change has to happen on the level of thinking as well as language and all those other things we've been talking about.
Thank you, TJ.
Thanks, bro.
I
Thanks,
agree.
TJ.
Thank you
Nice
guys.
to meet
Thank
you.
you guys. Excellent show.
Later, boss
you.
man.
Word up.
Peace.
All right.
So with that, we got a couple minutes here, and we always like to leave on a positive note with some solutions, right? And some critical food for thought to give people. So knowing where to come back next week, but even then, knowing that it needs to be an ongoing discussion, what do you suggest, Dr. Lester, for people to just to think about, to reflect on, and then to take action with?
Well, I don't have a prescription, but I say when we stop thinking about words, we stop thinking. And yes, there are all kinds of things happening in the world that are bigger than this particular conversation. But I do say that the conversations we have, the words that we use, become, as one person has said, the skin of our thoughts. And when we stop thinking, then that means that we're controlled by someone else and something else. So I think the least we can do is think about these. You don't have to do anything except think about it. And then the action that follows the thought is entirely upon us to decide how we're going to behave. If your behavior doesn't change, then that becomes a choice. But you can't say, or we don't want to sort of fall into this moment of, well, I didn't know. Because once you know, I like to say you can't unknow.
Yeah, word.
Well, Dr. Lester, you actually have a tweet personalized to you from someone named Matthew Whitaker. His Twitter name is Dr. Whitaker. But
Yo, Dr. Whitaker.
But he just tweeted you on behalf of Rashawn and said, "To my friend and brother, Dr. Lester, thank you for your leadership on this topic. Real talk." And Rashad agrees.
Back at you both. Back at you both for being such great supporters and such activists, because I know you think about these issues deeply. You care about them, and you're not just thinking about it, but you're also doing stuff. So props to both of you.
Well,
Yes.
It's definitely been an informative episode, and the thing is, we're not done yet.
We're
We
not.
have a whole other. We have part 2 of this series coming next week with none other than Mega Ran.
AKA Brenda.
Yes,
Brother, like, is so potent that he has 2 names, you know?
I never know which
Speaking of
one to call him,
naming.
and then there's his government name. Where
And
I'm
then the
just-
government. And you're like, what do I call you? I don't even know what to call you. But no, this has been really great. Dr. Lester, thank you so much for joining
Oh
us
gosh,
today. We greatly
the pleasure is
appreciate
all
it.
mine. And again, thank you for the work that you're doing to try to bring positivity. And something tells me that you're doing it. So thank you, because you could have invited any number of people to sit in this chair, Rashad, any of those folks out there who are doing this excellent work. So I'm humbled and honored by the presence.
Thank you. Thank you for sure. So the challenge, yes, let's clap. Woo, Dr. Lester. All right. So the challenge then, the gauntlet has been thrown down. I can't even talk. So this next week, just be mindful and kind of keep track of how many times you use the N-word. And then we want to know. We want to know on next week's show, when we're going to be back in the studio talking about this, and specifically to hip-hop culture, hip-hop lyricism, how we treat one another with this word amongst ourselves. So do that. Let us know. And, I think that's what I got. DJ DN3?
Yo, I'm elated. You know what I'm saying? I'll make it Dr. Lester an honorary member of the Midnight Marauder
Yes.
Show.
Yes.
I'm good,
Photo op.
yeah, so, you
The
know,
confetti is
Dr.
falling out of
Lester.
the ceilings now. Right?
yeah, you know what I mean?
I've
He's
won the
welcome
lottery.
anytime.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I think
So-
it's safe
Thank
to
you.
say that this is not going to be
Yes.
our first encounter with Dr. Lester.
Yes.
I think
we have some things in the works.
Yes, we got some things in the works. People-
Flattered and humble. So keep up the good work.
Yes, thank you. For all listeners out there, I know there was a lot of people that, definitely was tuning in. We thank you. You know what I'm saying? Please keep tuning in to us, Midnight Marauder Show. I mean, we got a lot of great topics that we bring about, and some good music too. I don't know. That's a wrap.